The sun dipped behind the jagged peaks of the Albanian mountains, spilling molten gold over the valleys. I, a humble shepherd, guided my flock through the summer pastures, the bells of the sheep clinking gently in the evening air. The mountains were alive with birdsong and the distant lowing of goats, and for a moment the world seemed tranquil, suspended in the sweet, fragrant twilight. I had spent many years here, wandering these slopes, tending sheep, living simply. But nothing in all my days, nor in the old tales my grandmother whispered, could have prepared me for what awaited me that night. The day had been long, the sun relentless, and by dusk I had led the sheep back to their enclosure near the craggy ridge. The flock settled quietly, and I lay down near the fire I had built, exhausted, letting the fading light wash over my tired eyes. I was roused, however, not by the wind or the cry of an owl, but by laughter, high-pitched, unnatural, and echoing down the mountainside. At first, I thought it might be a group of travelers, some villagers lost on the paths. But then the sounds grew darker. Chanting, rhythmic drumming, and the clatter of feet upon rocks as if the stones themselves danced. Curiosity, mingled with fear, drove me to rise. The moon had risen high now, full and silver, bathing the slopes in spectral light. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the forest edges seemed alive, twisting and shivering in the night breeze. I crept toward the sound. The closer I came, the more I realized that this was no ordinary gathering. A fire burned atop a plateau, flames flickering unnaturally blue and green, casting grotesque shadows upon the surrounding rocks. Figures moved around it, their bodies bending and twisting in ways that should have been impossible. Long, gnarled hands and faces that shifted, half human and half something else. I froze. The old legends of witches' gatherings, of the shapeless ones who haunted the mountains, whispered in my memory. The fear of revelation gripped me, yet I could not look away. The figures were chanting now, and the words, ancient, guttural, and alien, seemed to penetrate my very mind. A horned silhouette stepped from the circle, and I realized it was not a person, but something older, a creature of sinew and bone with eyes like molten amber. Around it, the others danced, a whirl of firelight and shadow, their laughter and cries intertwining with the wind. I felt the air thicken, heavy with power and malice. The fire cast light upon shapes beyond human comprehension, forms that writhed just beyond clarity. Limbs too long, bodies too thin, eyes that multiplied where they should not exist. I wanted to flee, yet my feet were frozen, as though rooted in the soil by some unseen force. Suddenly, one of the witches, or perhaps the spirits wearing human guise, noticed me. Her gaze, though brief, cut through the night, reaching past my fear and into my mind. A voice, or a thought, whispered, "You see too much. You are marked." The dance intensified. The flames leapt higher, casting visions of mountains bending like cloth, rivers reversing, and shadows consuming the stars. Screams and laughter merged in a symphony of cosmic madness. I felt my heart hammering, my mind straining under the weight of the impossible truths revealed before me. And then, a figure, a pale wraith with long hair like mist, rose from the periphery. Its eyes, hollow yet glowing, turned toward me. The world seemed to shrink, the mountains folding in upon themselves. Shapes I could not name drifted across the firelight, some resembling animals, some something worse, and I realized the legends had not been warnings, they had been invitations. I fell to my knees, the cold cutting through me, yet not entirely physical. It was a cold of the mind, the kind that gnaws at the soul. The wraith drifted closer, and I saw visions. The past of these mountains. Secret rites older than memory, creatures of the night who slept beneath the stones, dreaming. Their dreams, I understood, were the source of the chanting, the dance, the very madness of the gathering. Hours passed, or maybe only moments, I cannot tell. Time in that place had dissolved into an endless present of horror and fascination. I do not know if I screamed or whispered, only that I survived, somehow, when the first rays of dawn finally touched the plateau. The fire was gone. The witches, or whatever they had been, vanished. Only the stones remained, cold and indifferent. The mountains returned to their quiet grandeur, and the sheep grazed as if nothing had occurred. I, however, had changed. I walked back to my hut, the shadows of that night clinging to me. Even now, when the wind sighs through the peaks, when the moon rises silver over the Albanian Highlands, I hear the distant laughter and the drumming of the witches' dance. And I know the mountains are alive with things man should not name, with rituals that cannot be forgotten, and with eyes that watch from the darkness, waiting for those who dare tread too close. I am but a shepherd, yet I have seen what should not be seen, and the mountains will never let me, or any traveler, forget it. The night deepened. I crouched behind a jagged boulder, my breath fogging in the cool mountain air. The fire atop the plateau blazed like a living heart, unnatural hues of green and blue flickering over the faces of the dancers. The witches, or whatever creatures they were, moved with a fluidity that defied natural law, their limbs stretching and bending as if the very rules of the world were suspended. Suddenly, the horned figure I had glimpsed earlier stepped forward, its silhouette enormous against the firelight. The chanting grew louder, more insistent, vibrating in my chest and skull. I felt my thoughts twisting, my mind trying to parse impossible shapes, to name what had no name. A shadow detached itself from the circle, floating toward me over the snow like smoke. I froze, paralyzed by a dread that was almost physical, pressing against my chest. The wraith, its pale mist-like form glimmering in the moonlight, stared at me with hollow burning eyes. I understood then that I was not a spectator. I had intruded upon a world that had no room for outsiders. And yet, I could not look away. My fear mingled with fascination, and I felt an absurd, helpless curiosity. The horned figure raised its arms, and the fire surged upward, forming shapes of creatures from my deepest nightmares. I saw serpentine beings with wings of smoke, shadows with too many eyes, and faces that twisted like molten metal. The ground beneath the plateau seemed to ripple, mountains bending subtly, as if reality itself were kneading under some terrible will. Then one of the witches, tall with hair like black fire, approached the edge of the circle closest to me. She whispered words in a language older than any human memory. And in that instant, I felt my mind open, glimpsing visions of the mountain's secret history, the ancient rites, the sleeping entities beneath the rocks, the unseen watchers who drifted between worlds. My knees gave way. I sank to the snow, shivering uncontrollably, my mind teetering on the brink of comprehension and madness. And then, a voice, not spoken aloud, but felt directly in my consciousness, resonated. Leave, or remain as one with the shadows. The wraith extended a hand. I wanted to run, but my legs would not obey. My pulse raced, every instinct screaming to escape. Yet the mountain seemed to bend reality around me, closing the distance impossibly slow and impossibly fast at once. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the fire dimmed. The chanting ceased. The dancers froze, figures rigid like statues. A cold wind swept through the plateau, and when the first pale light of dawn touched the peaks, the witches and creatures were gone. Only the scorched snow and twisted shadows remained. I stumbled down the mountainside, heart pounding, the shapes of that night etched permanently into my mind. The plateau appeared normal now, the stones and fire scars seeming almost mundane. My flock grazed quietly in the morning sun, ignorant of the horrors that had danced above them hours before. By midday, I reached my small hut. The mountains were tranquil once more, yet I could not shake the feeling of being watched. Every gust of wind, every shift of shadow, seemed pregnant with the echoes of that night. I understood something vital. The Highlands had their own memory, their own life, and they did not forgive trespassers lightly. Even now, when the summer moon rises silver over the peaks, I hear faint laughter on the wind, the drums, the chanting. I feel the eyes of things older than humanity tracing me, and I know I am forever changed. I am but a shepherd, tending sheep by day. But by night, I am the witness to the mountain's secret, the keeper of visions no man should see, walking forever between the world of men and the domain of the shadowed watchers. The summer moon will return, as will the fire. And I will remember, as all who see what lies beyond must, that some nights are eternal, and some mountains are never silent,